already I've got the first two quatrains here. So now I'm midway through, and I'm looking towards the ending here. So now what I'm doing here, because I don't have any in the first 8 lines, I don't have any excess rhyme. So now I'm thinking of the rhyme structure of the last 6 lines, and I'm not going to go 4-2. I don't want to do the Shakespearean, because then that implies too much of a need for a bang, a sacco ending, you know, which generally tends to be moralizing, which I don't mind at times, but I'm going more for the 3-3 Baudelarian or Rilkean end here. So let's see. Where he smiles in a way just seeming to... Okay, because I had the line, smile as a hint of the skull, and here, where he smiles in a way just seeming. So I'm going to take a version of that line here. Beyond that joy undeterred by this rhyme, where he smiles in a way just seeming to hint at the skull. To hint at a skull. To hint at a skull is only joy. To hint at a skull. Only it relates. To hint at his skull. To hint at a skull, which only relates. To hint at a skull, which only relates. Which only relates. And what I'm going to probably do for the 6 lines is probably do A, B, A, and then B, A, B, something like that. Or I might, I don't know, I'll see what the next line brings. I might just go A, B, C, A, B, C. So let's see here. Okay, so I don't have to go back for the first. So okay, beyond that joy, undeterred by this rhyme, where he smiles in a way just seeming to hint at a skull, which only relates. Which only relates to his past. To his past, which this poem. Because I got the piece on to his past, which this poem. To his past, which this poem finds so distractive. To his past, this poem finds so distractive. To his past, this poem finds so distractive. So here's I'm just using a word because I like the iv sound. It gives me a lot to play with. Beyond that joy, undeterred by this rhyme, where he smiles in a way just seeming to hint at a skull, which only relates to his past, this poem finds so distractive. Unlike because we have the line, is the bough for that for but a moment sways in the first quatrain. I'm going to put it in the first tercet here too, and that will be the end line summary there. So it's almost like the climax. Let's see. To hint at a skull which only relates to his past, this poem finds so distractive. Unlike that bough. Unlike that bough, which for a moment stays. Like that bough, which for a moment stays. So already I've committed now with this relates distractive and stays to, usually they go, wait a minute, relates, stays, that's close enough. I could so now the 12th line becomes important because I don't know whether I'm going to do the off rhyme, just the assonant rhyme of relates and stays, or am I going to do rhyming relates, distractive, and stays. So let's see here. Now I wanted to use the word smallness. So now I'm looking here at things that I have left over that I haven't used. Words like grabastic and smallness, music, and I have to still get in the last terse at mellifluous light of evening. Mellifluous light of evening. Okay. Since I have that in that one, I'm thinking of... Okay, I don't have to use... I'm not going to use that one, I don't think. Distractive. Okay, okay, I am going to go probably with the off rhyme. Let's see here. Distractive, and there was life. Okay, so let me just get back into the narrative here. Beyond that joy undeterred by this rhyme, where he smiles, in a way just seeming to hint at a skull, which only relates to his past, this poem finds so distractive, unlike that bough, which for a moment stays, and which only relates to the past, like that, a moment stays within. And here's probably my final use of the artifice here. Unlike that bough, which for a moment stays within. I'm looking for something on the artifice of the poem here, which for a moment stays within, because I also had the word within up there. Unlike that bough, which for a moment stays within the poem, stays within. Unlike that bough, which for a moment stays within. And let's see, earlier the bough for a moment sways, as it relates to that, which for a moment stays within. Let's see. To hint at a skull which only relates to his past, this poem finds so distractive, unlike that bough which for a moment stays within the rhythm, stays within its rhythm, within its rhythm or its beginning. In its rhythm or its beginning. In its beginning. Okay. Here sometimes is where you can get a little stuck and it takes a little working out because sometimes it's difficult when you've committed to some kind of rhyme scheme or a structure to try to stretch something out. Let's see here. Undeterred by this rhyme, where he smiles in a way just seeming to hint at a skull which only relates to his past, this poem finds so distractive, unlike that bough which for a moment stays within its rhythm or its beginning to end. Like his beginning to end. Okay. Within its rhythm or its beginning to end. Within its rhythm or its beginning to end. Okay. So I haven't used any really violent images of him, and I'm loath to do so. I'm probably going to refer to him somehow as a murderer or a monstrous in the title, and let that just play off against the poem. The poem has a very quiet, Vermeer-like feel so far, and I want to sort of keep that so that the title, in effect, almost acts like a pebble dropped into the still water. Now I'm trying to end it here. Now I want to get the phrase mellifluous light of evening to parallel the morning earlier, and I've got beginning. So that's why I use the word beginning, so that I get the almost near the rhyme of the ings there, the gerundas. And distractive is the middle sentence, or the middle line in the first terse set. So I'm looking to try to work in "and then there was life," or maybe even grabastic in there, to get an off rhyme. I'm not committed to having total rhymes here. But let's see here. Let's try. Sometimes we'll just force it here, and then I'll polish it up later. Where he smiles in a way just seeming to hint at a skull which only relates to his past, this poem finds so distractive, unlike that bough which for a moment stays within its rhythm or its beginning, to end, period, and it ends. To end, and it ends, and then there was life. 10 lines. And then there is life. See, I had "and then there was life," but then there is life, because we don't want to be looking from the past here. That is this coming, because I've been in the present tense the whole poem, so it gives a very Genesis-like feel here, but I need to get the last line in here. So we got here, well, let's see, the first 13 lines. Let's see if I can get way to get the last line in, and then we can just polish it up a couple of times here. The uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only its motion relates the day beyond the bars that this sonnet infers, as the mellifluous light of morning inters his eyes within this space and time, beyond that joy undeterred by this rhyme, where he smiles in a way just seeming to hint at a skull which only relates to his past, this poem finds so distractive, unlike that bough which for a moment stays within its rhythm or its beginning to end, and it ends, and then there is life, the mellifluous light of evening. And then there is life, and let's see, and it ends, and then there is life, and the mellifluous light of evening, which gives a very painterly like port end. Okay, so and the mellifluous light of evening. Now I like this because Vermeer made his appearance in my mind midway through the poem. So now I've got, I don't know if I can hold this up here. Now I've got the whole, you won't be able to make it out because I write like chicken scratch. But okay, it's been what, about 40 minutes here. So I've got the first draft down here. And still the working title is just Ed Gein. But let me read the poem here, and I'll explain what the strengths are and the things that have to be tightened up here. So we've got Ed Gein. The uncaused moment that is this comma, is the bough that for, but, a moment sways, as only its motion relates the day, beyond the bars that this sonnet infers, as the mellifluous light of morning inters his eyes within this space and time, beyond that joy undeterred by this rhyme, where he smiles in a way just seeming to hint at a skull which only relates to his past, this poem finds so distractive, unlike that bough which for a moment stays within its rhythm or its beginning to end, period, and it ends, period, and then there is life, period, and the mellifluous light of evening. So we have the progression, especially, and it's odd, I rarely use rhetoricals, Whitman-like rhetoricals, and in a sonnet, but I think it works in this case because it gives a, I've had a couple of instances here with the slipped rhythm of inters and infers, and words like distractive, that give a sense of him being a little off here, but then and it ends, so he's caught, he's in some kind of piece, and a word like and just the repetition of it, and gives a sort of, it gives a sort of rhythm that there's some kind of stasis coming to his life, and just the image of the mellifluous light of evening, he's getting older, so, I've got the mellifluous light of evening parallel the mellifluous light of morning. I've got the bough swaying and then staying. So we've got motion in morning, and then we've got staying or a lack of movement in evening. So we get the sense of time, or something has come to us, getting more peaceful. I'm going to have to change one of the two beyonds. I'm going to have to drop. But now I'm thinking what the title is going to be, because now that I've got the initial outline of the sonnet, here's where the title might force some changes in word choices. Now I've simply got Ed Gein. So let me see if I can get a title from any of his life story here. Ed Gein. I don't know if I want to put his date of birth and whatnot under there, but let's see. Ed Gein, cannibal. Ed Gein, waistcoat. Ed Gein, skull. Ed Gein, apple. Ed Gein, gray bar. Ed Gein. Oh, let's see. Ed Gein. Ed Gein. I'm thinking Vermeer. What's a Vermeer type title? Let me, if you could just move your camera, I want to get a Vermeer book and look at the title of some Vermeer paintings, because I might use a play on a Vermeer title. Can I just walk by it?
No, I'll just pause.
Now I just got my Vermeer book here. Vermeer, the great Dutch painter, magnificent light, and I'm going for a quiet time. And Vermeer, Vermeer is the master of that. And I was just finished looking through this book here. I mean, there were some famous ones. Woman holding a balance, and Dylan was just mentioning to me that he thought Ed Gein in the Quiet Horrors, but I don't know if I want to do that, since I think that's implicit in the poem. I want something that adds a little more dimension to it. A lady writing. So the poem Ed Gein doing something here. Let's see. Ed Gein, girl with a pearl earring. This is a great painting here. You can see her cheek there. Just magnificent, the bone structure. Ed Gein. Let me see. Let me just look at the titles. He's got the Vermeer titles. Gotta be no. Allegory of Faith. He didn't do much. The Love Letter. The Art of Painting. Girl with the Red Hat. Ed Gein. Ed Gein with a Ed Gein and the Ed Gein. Ed Gein. I wonder if I could, well, let me think. Ed Gein, woman holding a balance. Ed Gein reading a letter. Ed Gein. So let's see here. Ed Gein. Let's see what is he actually doing here. Ed Gein becoming. Ed Gein becoming. Ed Gein becoming a metaphor. Ed Gein becoming. Because that's an interesting title. Ed Gein becoming, to be becoming, meaning to become respectable. Someone who's becoming is appealing. And here we're giving a more appealing portrait of Gein, and also he's in the act of becoming something. In the sonnet, that he's becoming a metaphor, but he's also maybe becoming a peaceful human being. So I think I like that, because he's not really doing anything. We're commenting on him. So I think I like that idea. Ed Gein becoming. Someone can fill something in, but also the word itself has many connotations. And I don't necessarily, I leave it up to the reader then to what they want to do. Whereas if I did like Ed Gein in the Quiet Horrors, I'm imposing too much on someone. So I like that, Ed Gein becoming. So let's see here. Now I'm going to do sort of a final draft here, and then I'll type it up and get here. So Ed Gein becoming. What the hell is today's date? 7th, 9/7/98. Okay.
Question.
What?
Ed Gein becoming, at the point of the poem, has he not already become?
Well, you read the title first here. Without this here, we don't know if it's Ed Gein. We don't know that it's become, because the first thing that we'd have then is the uncaused moment that is this comma. I mean, that's a weird kind of line to open a poem. We have no idea. And again, I don't know if Ed Gein is that strongly mythic that he's going to last 500 years, but then again, in a sense, it doesn't matter. I think one of the things, especially like, I think it's strong enough to use Gein, because I think if anyone's reading my stuff in 500 years, which I think they will, they're going to know that I've done famous killers, and it'll invite them in. So let's see here, Gein becoming. So now I just want to make sure that I've got syllabically everything tight here, and then just see some other stuff, try to get some sound-wise here. The uncaused moment that is this comma, we're in the present tense. The uncaused moment that is this comma, is the bough that for but a moment sways. And I like that but with the commas around it here, because it really comments right back here and says this is an artifice. And then let's see, that for a moment sways. There's this comma. And then I'm going to put a comma after here. This is a technique that I got, and I'll expound on this later, from a guy named Lyle Daggett. He used commas a lot, and I don't know if he realized what he was doing, but one of the things with the use of commas a lot, it lets you be able to pull out phrases and clauses and make connections. It's sort of like that little child's game with 16 squares, and there's one square missing, and you can do things around a lot here. So let's see here. Is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only its motion relates the day beyond the bars. Because we've got the day, okay. That as only its motion relates the day beyond the bars that this sonnet infers. Right, I like that. As only its motion sways the day. I'm going to put a comma beyond the day here. As only its motion relates the day, comma. Because then we can take out that whole line and we can read it in another way. The uncaused moment that is this comma beyond the bars that the sonnet infers. So we're able to take out lines and shift. And what I'm doing there is I'm inviting the reader to play with it and get what they want to it. It makes it more of an active poem, something that's engaging. Is the bough that for but a moment sways, and then you can read it also, the uncaused moment that is this comma is the bough that for but a moment sways beyond the bars that the sonnet infers. So that's good, that the sonnet infers. The uncaused moment is this comma is the bough that for a moment sways, the sonnet infers. So we've got a bunch of piling up of clauses here and phrases. Beyond the bars that the sonnet infers, as the mellifluous light beyond the bars that the sonnet infers. Infers as the mellifluous light of morning inters his eyes within this space in time. Well, I got a lot of ins in that line, I'm not sure. Inters his eyes in this space in time. Inters his eyes within this space of time. So I think I'm gonna go again to Alvin Lee here. Inters his eyes within this space of time. This space of time, the word of, rather than, because in time is too binding. The space of time, we don't know how it relates to time. So that puts a sense of lostness too early in the poem. Just a relational lostness in the words that might imply early in the poem that Gein is lost. So of here is a stronger word than in, and I have inter, within, and in. 3 times in a line is a little too much. 2 I can stand, but now I need to get rid of that second beyond in the 7th line here. As the mellifluous light of morning inters his eyes within the space of time, without that joy. Within this space of time, without that joy. In the space and time, comma, without. Don Moss is not going to like that, but I'm the hell with him, it's my poem. Without can be lacking and also outside of. The space of time, relation, without that joy. So we're getting a lot of abstract comments, and in a sense I was going for Vermeer, but Gein becoming. It's interesting because physically, if you're trying to envision the thing here, you're getting almost abstractions here, but yet the abstractions are being built upon with specific images, like a bough that's swaying, and the bars, Gein becoming. And now I just saw something, because he's got the bars here. If it's Gein becoming, we have to date this somehow after he has been caught. And that'll be my subtitle, Gein becoming, let's see, 57. How long? It says he was a model prisoner. So we want him not to be too old. He died in 84 or 83, they said, and he was caught in 57, born in 1906, 51. So maybe around the time he should be collecting Social Security, so it's, let's say 62, 63, early 60s. And also that relates to, because the 60s, quote unquote, a time of awakening. So maybe at the same time flower power and all that was coming in, Ed Gein is having an insight. So Ed Gein becoming, let's put him, let's date this the year I was born, 1965. That'll give someone Ed Gein becoming. So he's been in stir for about 8 years now. So he's having this transcendence here. Okay, within this space of time, without that joy, undeterred by this rhyme, where he smiled, without that joy, undeterred by this rhyme, where he smiles in a way just seeming to hint at a skull, to hint at a skull, to hint at his skull, where he smiles to hint at his skull, to hint at a skull, which only relates to, no, it has to be a skull, because then it can be his skull, and it gives a hint of the darkness. So the only darkness we really got here in this poem is the skull, a word like skull, which itself is loaded with a lot of meaning, which only relates to his past, this poem, which only relates to his past, comma, this poem finds so distractive. So that the phrase there, putting a comma before and after, this poem finds so distractive, means that I'm giving the reader the ability to toss that out there from the narrative, if they want, to his past. This poem finds so distractive, unlike that bough which for a unlike that bough which for a moment stays, unlike that bough which for a moment stays within its rhythm. And I had within the space and time within its, which for a moment stays within its rhythm or its beginning. That's a really alliterative. Within its rhythm or its beginning. But that's not because it's very mellifluous. It's short vowel sounds, so it musically it moves. It's smooth within its rhythm or its beginning to end. Period. But then we're getting that now. So we've gotten that smooth there, and so now we're getting to the summary here. The last two lines: within its beginning to end. Period. And it ends. Period. And then there is life. Period. And the mellifluous light of evening. So that's almost like. I like that. So now we're going to type this up, and I'll probably might change one thing here. But before we do, just sound-wise, I haven't talked about the sound here. I'm going to try to read it here and pause slightly at the commas just to give a sense of the rhythm and just the sound-wise here. So Ed Gein becoming, 1965. The uncaused moment, that is this comma, is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only its motion relates the day beyond the bars that the sonnet infers, as the mellifluous light of morning inters his eyes within this space of time, without that joy, undeterred by this rhyme, where he smiles in a way just seeming to hint at a skull which only relates to his past. This poem finds so distractive, unlike that bough which for a moment stays within its rhythm or its beginning to end, and it ends, and then there is life and the mellifluous light of evening. So, I like that. As far as the end rhymes, we have comma, infers, sways, day. They're off. They're not exact, and I like that. Morning, seeming is close. Time, rhyme is the only one that's really a direct rhyme here. Then we've got relates, stays, and beginning, evening, and then we've got the middle lines of the two tercets, distractive and life. So it's close enough that you can get away with it and having one that doesn't really rhyme, but it has the I there and the E. That's fine. And what else would we have here just to point out? Like I said, we have the swaying and the morning, and then we have the calm, the staying, and the evening, and both with mellifluous light. So we have coming together the and of the last three sentences gives, and in a sense, the use of the and almost is a grammatical recapitulation of the I's in the 12th line within its rhythm or its beginning, and so we have a sense that the poem here is using devices, and because we've acknowledged that we've acknowledged throughout that there's a comma sonnet poem, that it is an artifice. It gives a very, it's almost like in a lot of Vermeer's paintings here. For example, one of Vermeer's paintings here, quite a few of them, he's painting where he pulls back the curtain. This is the art of painting, and here's a curtain, and it's almost like we're acknowledging that that's the art. And so by using words like sonnet and poem, etc., and using these tricks here, we're almost like painting a portrait of Gein, but we're acknowledging that it is art, and so therefore it might not really be Gein, and it isn't really Gein since he's dead. And so now we're going to type it up, and we'll just my brother's typewriter, much better than that Smith Corona crap. I went through a couple of Smith Coronas in a couple of years. This brother has lasted about a year and a half. I didn't like the typeface when I first got it, but I got used to it. So this is actually this will be the 123rd sonnet that I've written for my Omnisonnets 3 collection. And this is, I'll probably have another, this is probably blocking you. I don't know if you want to, is the light blocking you?
No.
Okay. Let's see. So, whoops.
We'll probably go to handheld though.
Okay, well. Okay, so I'm going to get my 12 page here. Margin release. Right margin. Oops. I gotta put that in again. But so now it's just a matter of typing this up, and very little is going to change probably in the typed version because I did most of the cleanup before I typed it. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes inspiration strikes and there's something nagging. But I like the painterly aspects here. So let's see. 3, 7, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 spaces. So we go to 48, and so we go to 40 here. So we have my one-finger typing. Ed Gein Becoming, 1965. 1965. I know I'm so politically incorrect. I'm glorifying a murderer. No, I'm not. I'm just trying to show, because the poem doesn't glorify his murderousness in any way. So let's see here. The uncaused moment is the uncaused moment. That is this comma. And I just like to check myself, because sometimes I do poems that have 15 lines and no one catches it, not even me.
I'm just gonna say I don't know if I have enough tape for your one finger typing.
Well,
yeah, it's a joke.
Is the bough that for but a moment sways. Is, once I get this typed up, you can film it here, because then I can explain it a lot more easily than here. As only its motion relates the day. As only its motion relates the day. And the fact that, let's see, where does the first period? The first period really doesn't appear until the 13th line. Or it's beginning to end, which is a nice trick here, because that phrase, or it's beginning to end, and then 3 short lines, and it is ba-ba-ba-ba. You have this long, and in a sense that you have this long, complex sentence that mostly focuses on his becoming static or peaceful, but then you've got a tension here, because, and it ends, and then there is life, and the mellifluous life, sound-wise, and what it says is depicting his calm, but coming after that long, complex sentence, it's not. It's very staccato, and so that's interesting. Relates the day. Let's see. Beyond the bars, that the sonnet, beyond the bars that the sonnet infers, and I am going to break it beyond the bars that the sonnet infers, because I was thinking, should I do just 14 straight lines or go with quatrain, terces? I'm going to go the Baudelairean route here, because beyond the bars that the sonnet infers, it relates to this, it gives the comma in the sonnet, both the first and the fourth lines relate to the poeticness of the artifice, and that's a good way to end a quatrain. As whoops, thank you for the correction button. As the mellifluous, as the mellifluous light of morning. Beyond this sonnet infers. Okay, I just saw it. Here's, we put a comma there that wasn't there, so this is clean up. I did that because infers, watch with this line, I'll tell you why I put that comma there. Inters his eyes within this space, inters his eyes within this space of time. Now, originally here, if you can, I'll come back here. If you can see, I had beyond the bars that the sonnet infers as the mellifluous light of morning. I didn't have that comma after morning. And so reading-wise, we were going beyond the bars that the sonnet infers, comma, as the mellifluous light of morning inters his eyes. We have a straight narrative here. Putting that comma in there, we don't lose that because, but we can also drop, that also allows the reader here to perhaps drop this line and just go beyond the bars that the sonnet infers, inters his eyes within the space of time, infers, inters, that reading that if you drop that line beyond the bars that the sonnet infers, then the sonnet is also inters his eyes. The sonnet also is not only inferring but interring something, if you want to read it that way. If the person, so you're giving someone more options there, and you're not losing anything. And I will always go with the multiple meanings. If I can. Let's see. Okay. Space of time. Without that joy, undeterred by this rhyme. Without that joy, undeterred by. Without that joy, undeterred by this rhyme. Where he smiles, I'm thinking here, where he smiles, comma, or should I have the comma here, where he smiles in a way to hint at a skull, where he smiles to hint at a skull, where he smiles in a way, comma, just seeming, where he smiles to hint at a skull, where he smiles in a way to hint at a skull. Where he smiles in a way which only relates, where he smiles in a way which only relates to his past. I like the comma there better than here. Where he smiles in a way to hint at his skull. Yeah, that's a better comma. Again, okay, so where he smiles, placement of commas. Commas are very useful things, and this is a classic Schneider comma type poem where he smiles. Now wait a minute, where he smiles, should I? No, way just seeming. Now, see, if I put a comma, if I kept both commas there, that's a little too much there. Where he smiles, let me think here, no, maybe not. Where he smiles, comma, in a way just seeming, comma, to hint at a skull, which only, where he smiles in a way to hint at a skull, where he smiles in a way which only relates, where he smiles just seeming to hint at a skull, where he smiles just seeming which only relates. No, we smiles in, whoops, we smiles in a way just seeming. Okay, so 8 down, 6 to go. To hint at a skull which only relates. Hint at a skull. Which only relates. Hint at a skull. To his past, to his past, this poem finds so distractive. His past, this poem finds so distractive. Unlike that bough, unlike that bough which for a moment stays. Now here in the 11th line, I didn't want to put a comma, for example, after where he smiles, in the 8th line, where he smiles, comma, in a way just seeming, because it wouldn't relate to the next line. It would be confusing. But here I added a comma, for example, unlike that bough which, comma, for a moment, comma, stays, comma, because it'll connect well to the next line within its rhythm. But also, too, going back to the line that it relates to earlier, is the bough that for, comma, but, comma, a moment sways. I've got basically the same line, but rhythmically, I've got here that bough which, comma, for a moment stays. So I have the phrase for a moment separated, a space in time, for a moment, which relates back to that space of time, or it would have if I hadn't done the in, but it's just a little device that what looks kind of the same. It's comma for a moment, comma, stays, contrast against, but, comma, a moment sways. So just technically, visually, sound-wise, if you're reading it directly and you're pausing slightly for the commas, it's just a little bit different, a little bit off, which suggests change too. Okay, he stays within its rhythm or its beginning. Within its rhythm or its beginning to end. I have found within its rhythm to end. The bough that which, no, beginning to end, period to end, and it ends, and then there is life. It ends. And then to end, and it ends, and then there is life. And last line, and the mellifluous light of evening. Okay, now I'm just going to check to see typos, and then I'll explain just a little bit, and then I don't know, Dylan, if you have any questions, or something that maybe someone watching this might want to know, I can answer. So let's see. Gein becoming, 1965. The uncaused moment, that is this comma, is the bough that for but a moment sways, as only its motion relates the day, beyond the bars that the sonnet infers, as the mellifluous light of morning inters his eyes within the space of time, without that joy, undeterred by this rhyme, where he smiles in a way just seeming to hint at a skull which only relates to his past, this poem finds so distractive, unlike that bough which for a moment stays within its rhythm, or its beginning to end, and it ends, and then there is life, and the mellifluous light of evening. So, I mean, line-wise here, we've got a lot of alliteration and assonance. The first line, uncaused moment that is this comma, the C's and the M's. Bough that for but a moment stays, the B, the B's and the T's. Bough, but, then we have that, but, moment. Then we have the last word sways, then relates the day, motion beyond the bars that the sonnet infers. So we have beyond the bars, the sonnet infers. So we have an internal rhyme there in that line, which is good. As the mellifluous light of morning, the L's, mellifluous, and M's, and the I's, the mellifluous light of morning, inters his eyes within the space of time. Without that joy, undeterred by this rhyme. Again, a lot of T's in that line. And the Y's too, without a joy rhyme, where he smiles in a way just seeming, smiles, the S and M sound there, smile, seeming is good, to hint at a skull, which again, as far as I can tell, is really the only thing that suggests even violence here, which is really good. I went away from what would be expected. To hint at a skull, which only relates, so hint, relate, to his past, this poem, BP, finds so distractive. I got a nice abruptive word in there, distractive, but yet you can toss that phrase out because it's got the two commas around it. Unlike that bough which for a moment stays, which I explained that line before, what it contrasts well against the line that it comments on. Within its rhythm or its beginning, the I is going crazy there, but it's setting a nice sort of systolic pace to end, and it ends, and then there is life, and the mellifluous light of evening. So, I mean, that's it. Questions? We've done it.
Well, what does it mean? You want me to go with the audience?
But seriously, is that, I mean, you know, I mean, so we've seen here, and what we started about an hour and 15 minutes, I'd say, about 70 minutes here. So it gives us a good almost 2.5 hours to do other stuff. But so there it is. I think I've explained why I chose the title. I think we had a good idea of why I chose certain words. And this is, I have to say, to pat myself on the back, I'm going to have to let this sit for a few hours. I don't know if this is a great sonnet, but I mean, it's, even if it's not a great sonnet in that it doesn't illuminate anything, technically it's damn good. And that's one of the things that people have to realize is, if you wait for the moments of inspiration, you know, you're going to be waiting a long time. And so I just put here done. But you have to develop skill. You know, there are people that I know who have a lot of talent, awesome talent. They don't work at it. You have to work at it. And hopefully, in seeing some of the mindly processes here, you know, I went, you know, I had directions I was going, and then I scrapped them because it wasn't working. I had the Vermeer thing, but there's some abstraction here too. There are nice images, the mellifluous light of evening, and it's very classical. It's almost, you know, a mellifluous light of evening sounds like it could be from Shakespeare or a romantic poet, but yet it's about Gein. So those are things that give it some gravitas. I don't know what more I could say. Do you have any?
What percentage of your poetry would you say is by divine inspiration?
Inspiration. If I see a beautiful woman, I can rip off on something. But usually, most of these things here, if you see, I've got all kinds of ideas. It's usually, you know, sometimes it's not just one singular divine or inspired idea. It's the concatenation of a number of things. For example, I did this poem. This was a Sports Illustrated from last year on the long count, Dempsey and Tunney, and I did a poem at least a first draft that I'm going to bring to the Uptown Poetry Group this Friday that I'm going to need to get some ideas. I had to get it out sooner or later, and I got this Thomas Jefferson, there's some books there, this Thomas Jefferson poem. There are inspirations, and it's finding the forms. I want to do like different sonnets or rondeaus, ballades within this long Jefferson poem. It's about sort of let it just sort of come together, and then boom, one day, one Saturday, you know, I have 5 or 6 hours, I'll get out that draft, I'll bring it to the poetry group, I'll get a few comments, I may not change anything, I may structurally rearrange it, but it's all about work. I mean, art is work. I mean, you know, it's an avocation in the sense that you can't make money for it, but it has to be your vocation. And so here's yet another chapter in this one. And so that notebook is done here. That's done. And you know, off the top of my head, I generally give things a score between 1 and 100. I would say this is probably in the low 90s. I'll have to read it. Technically, I think technically the skill overwhelms what's saying it at this point. But if I come back and look at it, because I've got my marble notebook that I'll transcribe it into at the end of the day here. You know, having 8 hours or so between time might give me time to come at it fresh again. But I don't think there's anything that really can change unless I look and find I mistyped something here. But I mean, it's pretty solid. I mean, it's better than I thought I was going to do, quite frankly. And you know, before you came, for example, I was looking at the Vermeer book, and the Vermeer, you know, looking at a great artist gives you, you know, and like I said, when I originally put that down, the Vermeer idea didn't come until I wrote the first couple of lines, and so that's you have to be open to all influences. You can't segregate things out. You're only killing yourself that way artistically. You know, this is in a pro-Gein poem, and you know, again, throughout the title, what's it about? You know, Ed Gein becoming. I mean, without the title, you know, the bars, beyond the bars, I don't know. So that's it. Maybe someday we'll do another one. But that was probably about 75 minutes it took from conception. And this is fairly complex. This is a fairly complex sonnet. You know, there are certain young ladies out there that know who they are. If I was writing a love sonnet on one of them and I was moved by their beauty, I could probably bang one out in 20-25 minutes. But
nice pun.
What?
Bang.
So that's it.
Well, when you say you can bang one out, were you talking about the women or the poem?
Well, hopefully both. I'm into duplicity, yeah. So there it is, and I guess that's it then, unless there's any other